an era of biosimilars, can Originator Infliximab pricing remain competitive in treating inflammatory bowel disease? I'm Naazish Bashir, and on behalf of my co-authors Avery Hughes and Wendy Ungar, I'd like to share with you our review exploring this topic. And of course, none of the authors declare any conflicts of interest. Inflammatory bowel disease, or IBD, is a group of chronic diseases that includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Crohn's disease is characterized by inflammation of any part of the digestive tract, while ulcerative colitis mainly involves the large intestine. Both ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease can involve severe diarrhea, abdominal pain, fatigue, weight loss, and have a prevalence of 0.7% in Canada, which is rapidly rising, particularly in children. IBD in children and adults is increasingly being treated by biological treatments, such as infliximab, adalimumab, and vedolizumab. But while these are clinically efficacious, they are also very costly. In Canada, the Canadian Institute of Health Information reported that anti-TNFs account for the greatest proportion of public drug expenditures. In 2019, the anti-TNF drug class accounted for $1.2 billion in drug costs, which translated into 8.3% of total public drug expenditures, which averaged about $19,000 per beneficiary. Biosimilar anti-TNFs such as Inflectra, Renflexis, and Remsima cost approximately $493 to $525 per 100 milligram vial, which is around 50% of the cost of Originator Infliximab, or Remicade, which costs approximately $987 per vial. Canada's public health system is administered by the provinces, and the high cost of Originator anti-TNFs and near equivalent clinical efficacy of biosimilars has prompted some provinces, particularly British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario, to mandate that patients requiring anti-TNF drugs be prescribed lower-cost biosimilars. While provincial governments hope to save significantly in drug expenditures, this non-medical switch has created controversy among many patients and healthcare providers. Surveyed IBD patients are against a forced switch. One study suggests that surgeries could increase as a result of switching. Crohn's and Colitis Canada and the Canadian Association of Gastroenterology has released a joint position statement suggesting that naive patients may be started on a biosimilar, but that patients who are stable on Originator Infliximab should not be forced to switch. Since the cost of Infliximab was the main driver of governmental policy, we were interested to see if any IBD economic evaluations comparing Infliximab had addressed price in a one-way sensitivity analysis. Through a systematic review of the literature, we examined to what extent Infliximab price influenced the results of economic evaluations in IBD. We embarked on a systematic review which included articles where Infliximab was involved in the treatment pathway, in the treatment of IBD, and in which the parameter of drug price was examined in a one-way sensitivity analysis. We included English language economic evaluations in Crohn's disease and/or ulcerative colitis from 1998, which was the year that Infliximab was first approved, to October 2019. We included adult and pediatric studies. We did an open search of the main databases such as Medline, Embase, PsycInfo, HealthStar, and so on. Our search terms included Infliximab, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease, cost-benefit analysis, cost minimization analysis, cost effectiveness, and cost utility analysis. Two reviewers agreed on the full papers to screen and synthesize for qualitative analysis. We also did a search of the gray literature. We screened 844 abstracts, and then reviewed 147 full-text economic-related papers. Review articles and conference abstracts were excluded. Surprisingly, we ended up with only 31 or 21% of IBD economic evaluations that contain a one-way sensitivity analysis on the price of infliximab. We did not discriminate between whether the authors used Originator Infliximab or Biosimilar Infliximab or both. For these 31 studies, we summarized the types of economic evaluation conducted, the patient population, and whether infliximab was deemed cost-effective based on the jurisdictional willingness to pay threshold. We determined at what price infliximab was considered cost-effective based on their economic evaluations or one-way sensitivity analysis, and we then converted the infliximab price to 2019 Canadian dollars to compare to each other. Out of these 31 studies, we found that 22 or 71% were conducted in Crohn's disease and 9 were conducted in ulcerative colitis. There were 28 cost utility analysis, 2 cost effectiveness analysis, and 1 risk benefit analysis. 17 studies compared different combination treatment strategies, 4 compared different sequences of treatments, 4 compared the timing of administration of treatment, 2 compared treatment outcomes, 2 compared post-surgical treatment modalities, 1 compared switching of treatments, and 1 compared reimbursement strategies. 19 or 61% of all economic evaluations met the economic evaluation guidelines as outlined by the CHEERS guidelines. We looked at the studies ranged from 2001 to 2020 and had time horizons from 1 year to lifetime time horizons. 25 studies used Originator Infliximab, 2 used biosimilar, and 4 used both. The studies were mainly from North America and Europe, along with Japan and Iran. So the jurisdictional willingness to pay thresholds ranged from $22,000 to almost $200,000 Canadian, based on $150,000 US dollars per quality willingness to pay threshold. Some willingness to pay thresholds were based on a factor of the country's GDP, while others had a fixed value. We found that 8 studies were publicly sponsored and concluded that the ICER with the strategy containing infliximab was above the willingness to pay threshold, and 7 were below. For privately sponsored studies, 5 were listed as above the threshold and 2 were below the willingness to pay threshold. 9 studies did not specify their funding source.
As I mentioned previously, our main goal was to single out economic evaluations which conducted a one-way sensitivity analysis on the price of infliximab. Knowing that infliximab is expensive, we wanted to see if there was a particular price range at which infliximab was shown to be cost-effective across several studies and several jurisdictions. To compare apples to apples, we converted the estimated cost-effective price from each study into 2019 Canadian dollars and plotted the results. As you can see, the target cost-effective price for 1 vial of infliximab varied quite a bit from study to study and even within a jurisdiction. The numbers on the chart represent the cost-effective price estimated by the study in 2019 Canadian dollars. The flags represent the national jurisdiction for each study. The shapes of the data points tell you about study sponsorship. Rectangles indicate that the study was privately funded, ovals show that the study was publicly funded, and triangles indicate that sponsorship was not specified. As you can see, both publicly and privately sponsored studies showed a wide variation in cost-effective prices, and multiple studies within one jurisdiction had a wide range of cost-effective prices. The cheapest cost-effective price was calculated from an Iranian study at $66 per vial, based on a 3 times Iranian GDP willing to pay threshold. And the most expensive cost-effective price was $1,260 from a US study. And as you can see, there's a large range in between these values. And there wasn't a particular target cost-effective price for infliximab. While we didn't find a particular target cost-effective price for infliximab, we did calculate that the median cost-effective price was $588 per vial, and the mean cost-effective price was $577 per vial. Interestingly, these values are quite close to the current Canadian biosimilar price of infliximab at around $500 per vial. In Canada, drug price negotiations are not made public, so we do not know how final prices with payers are achieved.
So what did we conclude? Surprisingly, considering the overwhelming cost of infliximab treatment, very few economic evaluations, 21%, considered price in their sensitivity analysis. Our review showed that cost-effective prices of infliximab widely ranged between $66 and $1,260 Canadian, depending on the study and the jurisdiction. We found that the median and mean cost-effective price for infliximab for one vial was approximately $580, which is close to the current price of biosimilar infliximab at 525 Canadian dollars. Ours was the first review of IBD economic evaluations that targeted price as a parameter. Other originator biological treatment manufacturers may want to consider this method for estimating pricing in anticipation for other biosimilars entering the market. In consideration of governmental and patient perspectives, Originator Infliximab may want to consider reducing its price or other pricing options for IBD to maintain a presence in the market. The strengths of our study were that this was a novel way of using economic evaluation data to examine pricing across global markets. The studies we included used infliximab in several ways, such as in treatment combinations, as well as treatment timing or the sequences of treatment. To our knowledge, this was the first review of IBD economic evaluations that addressed price. Some of the limitations of the study were that in some studies it was difficult to tease out the price of infliximab because it was bundled with other costs. And there was a large variation in willingness to pay thresholds among the different studies, which could have affected the cost-effectiveness price. We tend to promote patient engagement as well as value for money in our work. And the non-medical switch policy is a prime example of where these two ideas conflict.
In addition to price reductions, pricing strategies to mitigate the conflict may include financial risk-based contracts, health outcomes, mortgage model, a subscription model, indication-specific pricing, and volume-based pricing. Financial risk-based and health outcome strategies rely on drug performance. A mortgage model spreads the cost out over time. A subscription model gives unlimited access for a fixed cost. Indication-specific pricing is for drugs with multiple indications. And volume-based pricing is suitable when large quantities of a drug are needed. A mortgage model may be the most appropriate for IBD, since treatment costs are often lifelong. Indication-specific pricing might be considered since infliximab is used for multiple indications, but it is efficacious in all those indications as well. Our research tried to identify whether infliximab price was a major driver of outcomes in economic evaluations, as it has been in recent Canadian drug policy. And it didn't seem to be.
More discussions on this topic are likely to take place, considering the need to accommodate biosimilars into the market, value for money, and patient preferences. Thank you for your attention. And here are my acknowledgements.